If Colorado's elections aren't broke, why are the Democrats who run the legislature trying to fix them? We will also explore an effort there to potentially stop fatal medical miscalculations like the one involved in the death of Elijah McClain. Did you take the SATs? How'd you do? You likely remember because they mattered. What if they didn't matter anymore? Red Rocks makes room on the schedule for performers who are both everyday and extraordinary. And construction on an inclusive playground runs into an issue, putting them under budget but determined to still build a place where all kids can play. Anyone else thinking what I'm thinking? Because this is next. Colorado's elections have such bipartisan respect that when Major League Baseball's All-Star Game was fleeing Georgia over voter suppression efforts, the game was moved to Denver. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger wondered, though, if Colorado is such a good example of how you should run an election, why did Democrats at the state capitol just introduce an 82-page bill to change the way they work?
There really is not a lot that is groundbreaking in this bill. I'll be honest. It is a long bill, and it is largely technical.
The 82-page election bill just introduced by Democratic lawmakers focuses a lot on recalls. We've seen quite a few failed attempts lately. 2 tries to oust Democratic Governor Jared Polis never turned in signatures. And in 2019, there were failed efforts to recall multiple Democrats: State Representative Tom Sullivan, Senate President Leroy Garcia, and State Senators Brittany Pettersen and Pete Lee. For recall petitions, this bill states that if the person asking for your signature is paid, they would have to wear a badge that says "Paid Circulator" in all caps with their name and phone number. The petition would also have to include a dollar amount for what the recall election might cost.
I think that's an attempt to get people not to sign the petition.
Lori Cutinelli is efforting another recall attempt against the governor, which does not yet have to declare how much the recall might cost.
Upholding our constitutional rights to redress our grievances with the government through recalls is priceless.
I think it's just trying to be more transparent around all it takes to recall to conduct a recall election.
Matt Crane, former Republican Arapahoe County Clerk, is now executive director of the Colorado County Clerks Association, which helped work on this bill. It includes a few changes to ballot drop boxes. In the future, drop boxes would not be allowed at police stations or sheriff's substations.
I think that there's some concern from some voters and various stakeholder groups where they have a history of their communities not trusting the police. And so I think that's where that concern comes from.
The ones that exist now can stay. Denver's most popular drop box is at the Denver Police Station at I-25 and University. Douglas County has one at the Highlands Ranch Sheriff's Office substation. And just like in-person voting, those drop boxes would have to stay open to anyone in line on election night at 7 p.m.
Just because we feel we're ahead of the rest of the country in the way that we conduct our elections doesn't mean that we still don't have room to grow and improve.
A few other tidbits from the bill. Colleges and universities would have to send an email blast to all students the first week of the fall semester and the last week of the spring semester, giving information about how to register to vote or change or update your voter registration. And get this, Kyle, apparently it's not currently in state law what happens during a recall election if the end result is equal number of votes for no, don't recall that person, and yes, recall that person. This bill makes it explicit that tie goes to the person in office. They get to keep their office. I don't know what happens if there's a recall right now where there is a tie.
That is absolutely wild. Although, Marshall, what you just said assumes that the office holder would vote to keep their job. I think most people have probably had at least one job in their life where if it came down to it, they might not vote to keep it.
Could you imagine if you lost the election by that one vote because you chose not to vote for yourself?
Yeah, it's like, you know what? Upon second thought, I'm out of here. Have a great day, everybody. Interesting stuff. Marshall, thank you very much. By now, you know the story. That Elijah McClain died after Aurora police held him down and paramedics injected him with ketamine. More ketamine than somebody that his size needed. A bill in the state legislature right now would change how that drug is given, requiring an accurate weight estimate and vital sign monitoring when it's used in the field. It would also prohibit law enforcement from asking paramedics to juice somebody and to block the use of ketamine on a suspect. Why all this? Because sponsors at the state capitol say these weight estimates can be fatally wrong.
The misjudgment of weight is very much race-based and biased. And unfortunately, people see people of color, men with tattoos as weighing more than they do. Very commonplace, sometimes by 100 pounds. That 50 to 100 pound miscalculation of the weight can end in someone's life when you give them ketamine.
The Emergency Medical Services Association of Colorado is opposed to the bill. They testified that emergency medical personnel should be the ones making these calls. They softened their opposition today as that bill was amended. It passed the House and is expected to pass the state Senate. Democrats control both. The pandemic really forced colleges and universities to rethink the application process for high school students, and that included, for many, skipping the requirements of an SAT or ACT test score. Colorado Democrats would like to make that a permanent option. There's a lot happening in the state capitol if you hadn't gathered that by now. So under current law, Colorado's public higher education institutions have to require a national test assessment score. Legislators are debating a bill that would remove the requirement and let each individual institution decide if they want to keep the assessment test as part of the criteria. So this could open up the door to higher education to a lot more students to be considered at least as candidates. People like Andrew Rulin. He's graduating from MSU Denver at the age of 36. He said standardized tests created a lot of self-doubt after high school.
You have the emphasis put on ACTs and going to college, and that was intimidating to a guy like me who struggled through life in various ways. You know, I'm a people person and all that, but you still have your internal struggles. So going to school just didn't seem like a real reality to me at the time, right? There's people that have dreams to go to school, man, to go to college and be contributing members of society, but you're hindering that by saying the standardized test or this particular test is the only way in, right?
Perfect sweatshirt for the interview, right? Have hope. On this topic of SAT and ACT scores, can I make a recommendation? There's a recent episode of the radio show and podcast This American Life that looks at how dropping that test requirement impacted the admissions process during the pandemic. I listened to it while doing yard work for my mother-in-law on vacation. So schools reported that they did get a larger and more diverse pool of applicants by lifting the test requirement. But admissions officers said on the show that that is really just one step in opening up higher education to more people and judging the impact. So, I mean, they offer an admissions slot, but then those students have to decide whether they want to attend said university, whether they think that they can afford it. And then there's the question of whether those students who don't submit the test score can come and succeed on campus in the long run. So as admissions officers were saying, it's really like a 4-year process to determine the 1-year impact. It's a really great listen. We'll put a link to that podcast on the next Facebook page. All right, time to take a look at our COVID numbers for the day. 30% of Coloradans have now completed the vaccination process, closing in on almost 1.8 million people with shots. 794,000 of our neighbors are waiting on their second dose of Pfizer or Moderna. There are 634 COVID patients in Colorado's hospitals. That is up a dozen patients from the day before, up 73 patients from this time last week. The climb continues. Hey, good news on positivity, at least on a one-day note. It was 4.8%. That is about half of where it was the day before. Our 7-day average, not great. It's now over 6%. So to pay no attention to Colorado's climbing COVID cases, especially among young people, because a Boulder Valley Schools board member wants to ditch the district's mask mandate. Director Donna Myers did not get much traction for her motion last night.
I believe it's time to allow parents to make the decision of allowing their young children to wear or not wear the face mask or these coverings.
She could not get a second for that motion last night. A parent who wrote to the board member in frustration said that what she got in return from her was a link to an anti-vax natural healing website.
Information literacy is not optional for board members. I don't care if 500 people come to your board meeting and tell you that the public health guidelines that the state of Colorado have implemented are incorrect. I don't care if 500 people come and tell you that. We have to be a fact-based society, and we have to root our decisions on fact.
Director Myers sent us a statement today saying, quote, after receiving dozens of letters and listening to many well-educated parents and educators on the mask issue, I am simply advocating for parents, students, and staff to have the option of wearing a mask or not. A long-awaited project to build an inclusive playground for kids of all abilities in Aurora has hit a snag just months before it was going to open. The playground is planned to go in at the Stanley Marketplace in Aurora, close to Children's Hospital, so families could visit as well as people from around the metro area. It's a park that is designed for everyone, without the typical barriers that would keep kids who use wheelchairs or have other physical challenges from being able to play right alongside other kids on most playgrounds. A nonprofit called Lou Bird's Light Foundation raised money for this playground for years, and they broke ground last year, then discovered some soil issues that have been expensive to fix. The organizers tell me they're not sure where the money will come from to complete their inclusive playground dream, but they said one way or another they will find it. And that's where most news stories end. But what do you say we don't just watch? I mean, how about we build the inclusive playground that we can all then go enjoy and visit? Our Word of Thanks micro-giving project for this week is helping Lou Bird's Light Foundation finish that playground where all kids and families can play together. This is going to be a special spot for the whole community, accessible in every way, from the surface beneath our feet and wheels to the equipment, like a wheelchair bouncer, kind of like a trampoline, accessible to all, as well as an inclusive merry-go-round. And everybody is invited to come out once this thing is finished, hopefully by early summer. So text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491, and I'll send you that link to donate. Even $5 from a whole bunch of people watching, that would make a big-time difference. Listen, you know how this works. Next year, you already built a football field for a town down in southern Colorado. Now we can build an accessible playground, inclusive, for anybody in the metro area. When you go by, and you should go by, you'll see me and my girls there. Be sure to come up and say, hey, we helped build the playground. An esports company claims CU has a new rival. We will put that to the truth. The Kim test. And Red Rocks honors everyday folks who use music to help.
I don't think anybody expects to get that call saying, you know, we saw what you did and it's kind of heartbreaking and uplifting at the same time. Would you like to come play Red Rocks?
It's a beautiful idea. We'll share with you next.
The storm that brought the rain, snow, tornadoes, and hail has moved out, and with sunshine and nice recovery today, 57 degrees in Denver will go 10 degrees warmer tomorrow. As the storm moves into the southern plain states, we do expect a severe weather outbreak tonight and tomorrow across Oklahoma and Texas. But for Colorado, clear skies tonight and a sunny or warmer day tomorrow. Mid-30s this evening with a few high clouds early. Tomorrow, sunshine close to 70. We'll move into the 80s for the first part of the weekend and then introduce showers Sunday afternoon and a few thunderstorms for Monday and Tuesday of next week, with a storm that will bring temperatures back to the lower 50s.
The most Colorado thing we saw today is a rescued goat that became like family. The goat story begins in a field behind a neighborhood in Fort Collins. Apparently, baby goat was struggling during birth. Neighbor Kathy stepped in to help, and then the goat just kind of became her pet. Ellie, as they call it, lives at her house, goes for rides, head poking out the window like a dog in the car. Double take, not a dog, it's a goat. A human's good deed rewarded with the companionship of a very good goat. Thanks to their neighbor Susan for sharing this story with us. All right, can you top that? Go ahead, send us the greatest of all time. Email next@9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. How are you celebrating Rivalry Week, Buffs fans? We're not talking about the Rocky Mountain Showdown, CU versus CSU. No, we have all been reliably informed via press release by an esports company seeking publicity that CU's true rival is the University of Montana. This company's just trying to gin up attention for an esports competition between the schools. Let's see if CU superfan Kim Christensen's going to buy it.
Hey, Kim. Is CU and Montana esports really a rivalry?
No. No. Absolutely no.
Grizz fans would also likely be surprised to learn that their rival is now Colorado. So would fans then of Montana State. Go Cats! The 80th birthday for one of the world's best music venues, and they bought us a gift. Names you don't know, playing Red Rocks because they all did something exceptional for our community. And in news about rocks that roll, we have a boulder size controversy again. So what say you? How big are those rocks? Next. We used to howl. Remember that? A year ago, right about now, everybody go outside 8 p.m. onto porches and sidewalks and lawns and balconies and howl in unison in a show of support for frontline workers in the pandemic. Tonight, Red Rocks is going to make some noise in tribute to people who took those pandemic performances to the next level. The 80th anniversary of our state's best-known music venue is going to celebrate people who performed publicly for their communities at the height of the pandemic. Like an 85-year-old pianist who played outside senior care facilities, an ICU nurse who sang to her patients, first responders who filled neighborhoods with the sound of their bagpipes. They're all going to play Red Rocks tonight.
You know, somebody who goes out of their way to sing or provide their art as a pianist or, you know, play the bagpipes. It means something to people. That's what uplifts people's spirits. And, you know, we just couldn't be more proud of the people in our community who do that. And, you know, this is a very small way to be able to pay them back and say thanks.
That is a really sweet idea. COVID restrictions, of course, mean that it won't be a full house. There will be fewer than 3,000 people there tonight. Another pile of rocks, far less picturesque, has Highway 119 through Boulder Canyon shut down, likely for days. The rocks came down in the Narrows during last night's rainstorm. Rock size is now our obsession. CDOT says the rocks are SUV-sized. I assume, in true Colorado boulder sizing tradition, what they mean is that they are rocks the size of large SUVs, the size of small SUVs. It's playground for everyone in our community. Let's help build it together and all go enjoy it when it's done. Our chance to make a place for everyone a reality. Next. We're building a playground this week, and not just any playground, an inclusive, accessible playground in Aurora, a place where children and adults of all physical ability levels can go and find a place made for them, made for everyone, a place where kids can play together whether or not they use wheelchairs or anything else to help them get around. The nonprofit Lou Bird's Light Foundation ran into some extra unforeseen expenses after breaking ground at the Stanley Marketplace, some soil issues, and they're looking all over the place for about $150,000 to complete this dream of an inclusive playground. They think they can get it done by the end of spring. We can help. Text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. I'll send you the link to join me and others in donating. As always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5. And again, this playground is for everyone. So once this thing gets built, and it will get built, I'll see you there. Joe Jensen says, I decided to donate to help build the playground tonight because I have some friends who are parents who use wheelchairs. I'd love them to have an accessible place to play with their kids. An anonymous note tonight. Hi, Kyle. Sorry to see you're back. Have you ever noticed how much you wave your hands all over the place? Tuck these wings under here, and see you next time.